We've searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body, so everybody thinks he's alive. We do too.
We'd appreciate anyone with any information about him or have seen him or think they saw him to please call the Hollywood police.
Drink a cup of coffee, smoking cigarette. Once you get into the habit, you do it more and more. Only kind of person I never killed. I never killed a child.
Police.
Ain't no panic. The person's a killer anyhow. It don't make a difference who it is. You stump on blood, you still killing. So it don't make a difference what you kill.
We've searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body, so everybody thinks he's alive. We do too.
I just wish it had a happier ending.
Adam Walsh, your mother is waiting for you. Please come to the toy department. The announcement echoes through the Hollywood Mall on a Monday afternoon in July. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The smell of department store air conditioning hangs in the air. That particular mix of carpet, plastic, and summer heat cuts short at the door. Shoppers push carts. Registers ring. Life moves at the ordinary pace of an ordinary day. The announcement plays again and again, every 15 minutes, like a heartbeat counting down. No little boy appears. No freckled face peeks out from behind a clothing rack. No sandy-haired 6-year-old comes running. The toy department stays quiet, and with each passing minute, the temperature in that building drops. Not from the air conditioning, but from something else entirely. Something every parent in that store is beginning to feel in the base of their chest. This is July 27, 1981. What happens over the next 16 days will force an entire nation to rewrite how it protects its children. But before we get to what America got wrong, you need to understand what America lost. Hollywood, Florida in 1981 is the kind of place that feels like possibility itself. Warm winters, wide streets, the Atlantic Ocean close enough that you can smell it on the right kind of afternoon. It is a place where young families plant roots and believe in the future. John Walsh believed in it completely. He was 35 years old, vice president and director of marketing at the Paradise Grand Hotel, working on a $26 million development project. He was the kind of man who moved fast, thought faster, and loved his family with everything he had. His wife, Reve, sharp, driven, beautiful, competing in amateur bodybuilding tournaments while finishing a part-time degree in interior design, was his equal in every way that mattered. Together they had built something real, a home, a career, a life, and they had Adam. Adam John Walsh, born November 14th, 1974, 6 years old, 3 feet 6 inches tall, sandy blonde hair, hazel eyes, dimpled cheeks covered in freckles. A gap in his front teeth where a new one was slowly working its way in. John Walsh would later say, "If you could order a son out of a catalog, that would be Adam. He loved baseball. He loved drawing. He called his mother Mommy and his father Daddy. His nickname was Skeeter. He was, by every account of everyone who knew him, the kind of child that made the people around him feel lucky to be alive." On the morning of Monday, July 27th, 1981, Adam woke up and watched Sesame Street. An ordinary morning. The most ordinary morning in the world. John kissed him goodbye before heading to work. He had meetings, a big project, the usual forward momentum of a life going well. He had no reason to hold on longer than he did. No reason at all. Reve loaded Adam into their gray checker car around 11 in the morning. Errands to run. First stop, St. Mark's Lutheran School, a few minutes from home. She dropped off a $90 check to register Adam for 2nd grade in the fall. She was planning his future. That detail matters. On the last morning of his childhood, his mother was paying for his education. Then a 5-minute drive to the Hollywood Mall. Like Reve had been watching a specific lamp at the Sears department store, waiting for it to go on sale. She had the advertisement in her hand. Today was the day it was marked down, and she was not going to miss it. They entered through the north entrance, the way she always did, It was her habit, her usual spot. She knew this store the way you know a place you've been 100 times. And that's when Adam saw it. In the toy department, just inside the entrance, there was a display. A brand new Atari 2600. The most exciting piece of technology a 6-year-old in 1981 could imagine. A real video game system, right there in the store. A group of older boys had gathered around it, taking turns playing. Adam's eyes lit up the way only a child's eyes can. He begged his mother to let him stay and watch. Reve looked around. His security guards on the floor, dozens of shoppers, store employees everywhere, and right outside the windows, across Hollywood Boulevard, the Hollywood Police Department. Visible, present, close enough to cross the street in under a minute. It was noon, broad daylight, one of the busiest, most public places you could imagine. She made the decision any reasonable parent would make. "I'm going over to the lamp department," she told him. "It's just a few aisles away." Adam looked up at her and smiled. "Okay, Mommy, I know where that is." Those were the last words he ever said to her. If you found your way here because you believe some stories deserve to be told properly, this is the channel for that. Subscribe. We do this every week. Now let's keep going. Reve walked to the lamp section. Close enough that she could practically see the top of his head. She looked for the lamp. It wasn't on the floor. She asked a salesperson. They checked the back. Not in stock. The saleswoman responsible for that section was on her lunch break. Reve left her name and number and turned around. She walked back to the toy department. The boys were gone. All of them. The Atari sat there abandoned, controllers resting on the display, the screen still glowing. Reve's heart stopped. She called his name. Nothing. She walked every aisle within reach. Nothing. She went to customer service. "Page my son. Adam Walsh. Please." The announcement crackled over the speakers. Once, twice, every 15 minutes. Silence. By sheer coincidence, Reve's mother-in-law, Jean Walsh, was shopping in the same store that afternoon. They found each other. Together, on with store employees, they combed every corner of Sears, every department, every dressing room, every exit. But here is what Reve didn't know yet. Here is what Sears did not tell her. At approximately noon, just minutes after she had left Adam at that video game display, a fight broke out. Two groups of boys arguing over whose turn it was to play. A security guard was called over. Her name was Kathy Schaffer. She was 17 years old, part-time, plain clothes, untrained. Kathy Schaffer looked at the two groups of boys and made a snap judgment. She asked the boys in one group if their parents were in the store. They said no. She directed them out through the north entrance, the side Reve always parked on, the side Adam knew. Then she turned to the other group, two boys. She asked the same question. The older one said no. The younger one, wearing green shorts and a red and white striped shirt, said nothing at all. He was shy, scared. He probably thought he was in trouble and didn't know what to do. Kathy Schaffer ordered him out through the east exit, a door Adam Walsh had never used in his life, leading to a part of the parking lot he had never seen, on the opposite side of the mall from where his mother's car was parked. Sears knew this had happened, and for 27 years, Sears said nothing. When Reve asked a store employee where the boys had gone, the answer she received was, "He's around somewhere. You'll find him." But Adam wasn't around. He was outside, 6 years old, standing in an unfamiliar section of a massive parking lot on a Monday afternoon, in a world that had just become completely unrecognizable to him, confused, frightened, alone. And then someone was watching. By 1:55 in the afternoon, nearly 2 hours after Adam was last seen, the Hollywood Police Department was finally called. The station was directly across the street. It took 45 minutes for a uniformed officer to arrive on the scene. The very next morning, a local newspaper ran a quote from a police department spokesperson. "Kidnapping is not suspected. The kid is probably trying to get home. A 6-year-old boy, 5 miles from his house. Never walked anywhere alone in his life. Probably trying to get home." When John Walsh arrived, having driven 45 minutes from his office in Miami after Reve called him in a panic, he could not believe what he was seeing. He demanded answers. He wanted a search team. He wanted detectives. He wanted the resources that a missing child deserved. that a uniformed officer looked at him and said, "Hey, cowboy, slow down. I don't like your attitude. Most kids walk home by themselves." John Walsh set up camp at the Hollywood Police Department and did not leave for 2 weeks. He and a close business partner stayed there around the clock, setting up their own phone tap in case a ransom call came in, because the police weren't doing it. Reve sat through the first night at the station with only one thought circling her mind. Adam's yellow flip-flops. His feet would be tired, scratched. He'd be cold in his t-shirt when the Florida night came in. They distributed 500,000 flyers. Adam in his baseball uniform, smiling, looking out at the world like it owed him nothing but good things. John went on television, his voice cracking at the edges. "We're not looking for revenge. Let's just drop him off somewhere safe. We'll forget the whole thing." They raised the reward to $5,000, then $10,000, then $100,000, eventually $120,000, the equivalent of more than $350,000 today. The public responded. Helicopters circled. Volunteers walked fields. Truck drivers communicated over CB radios. Strangers spent their own gas money searching for one little boy they had never met. But here is what made everything worse. There were no Amber Alerts in 1981. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children did not exist. By federal law, the FBI could not assist unless there was evidence the child had crossed state lines or a ransom demand had been received. And when John Walsh called the county coroner to ask about unidentified bodies, the coroner told him that information was exchanged by mail every 6 months. Hey, John asked, "Is my son in the NCIC, the National Crime Information Computer?" The coroner didn't know what that was. And when he found out, no. Missing children were not in the database. Stolen cars were. Stolen guns were. Not stolen children. "We put a man on the moon," John said, "and you're telling me I have to call every single coroner in Florida to find out if my son is dead?" The coroner nodded. "It's up to you." By day 7, the media moved on to the next story. The search continued, but hope was bleeding out slowly and everyone knew it. Something was coming. 120 miles north of Hollywood, in a drainage canal off the Florida Turnpike. Something was about to surface. But first, the investigation turned inward. This is where every investigation of its kind has to begin. And the statistics are uncomfortable, but they are real. When a child goes missing, the person responsible is almost always someone known to the family. A parent, a relative, a family friend. So Hollywood PD started close. Every person in Adam's immediate circle was investigated. Every one of them was cleared. But the process consumed months that should have been spent elsewhere. The department became fixated on a family friend who had recently moved out of the Walsh home. A man who had been having an affair with Reve. They ran polygraphs. They ran hypnosis sessions. They pushed so hard that one officer later admitted, "We put him through the ringer. We did everything short of beating him. We violated his civil rights. He was innocent. John and Reve were innocent." And the Walsh family never believed for a moment that someone close to them had done this. And the months spent chasing that theory were months the real killer had to disappear into the rest of his life. With the family circle finally exhausted, investigators turned back to what the Sears security guard had admitted, that she had sent a boy matching Adam's description out through the east exit, alone, into a part of the parking lot he had never seen. The abduction had almost certainly happened right there, and the police had not focused there nearly soon enough. August 10th, 1981. 16 days after Adam Walsh walked out of the east exit of a Sears department store. John and Reve were due to appear on Good Morning America the following morning, August 11th. David Hartman had agreed to give them a national platform to plead for Adam's safe return. They were going to New York. They were going to look into the camera and ask whoever had their son to please bring him home. That evening, 2 fishermen were casting lines near a drainage canal alongside the Florida Turnpike, near Vero Beach, more than 120 miles north of Hollywood in rural Indian River County. One of them saw something floating. He thought at first it was a doll's head. It was not a doll. They called police immediately. The Florida Highway Patrol was notified at 7:30 p.m. Indian River County divers searched the canal. They never found the rest of the body. The next morning, while John and Reve were live on Good Morning America, telling a national audience they still had hope, that they still believed their son was alive, with that a $100,000 reward was waiting for anyone with information. Police in Florida were making identifications. When the Walshes landed back in Florida, reporters were waiting. The police had news. John Monahan, one of John's closest friends, the same man whose own son John had once pulled from the water as a child, drove to Indian River County and identified the remains by the gap in Adam's front teeth and the stub of a new tooth already pushing through. He had seen Adam just days before. He knew that smile. Adam's dentist brought dental charts and x-rays, an amalgam filling on the lower left molar. A perfect match. And years later, mitochondrial DNA from the jawbone would be tested against Reve Walsh, a match that ended any remaining doubt. Dr. Ronald Wright of the Broward County Medical Examiner's Office performed the examination. His findings were consistent with a child who had been dead for at least 10 days, killed within a day or two of the abduction, not kept alive. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Adam did not suffer long. That fact, as devastating as it is, became something his parents held on to. The Walshes held a funeral, an empty casket, because the remains were evidence and could not yet be released. They could not bury their son. John went to Dr. Wright and begged him, sat in his office for hours. Dr. Wright told him, "I can't give you Adam's remains yet, but there is something you can do. You can help other children. Make sure he didn't die in vain." That conversation changed the direction of John Walsh's life. But first, they had to find the man responsible. The investigation would consume the better part of 2 decades. Dozens of leads, only multiple suspects, each one building toward a resolution that kept slipping away. Edward James was the first significant name to surface. He had been arrested in 1981 for abducting a boy in Pompano Beach. A cellmate came forward claiming James had confessed, that he had lured Adam with ice cream, that he had no fear of ever being caught. Police found that James had been absent from his apartment complex for 2 consecutive weeks in the summer of 1981, and that he had a seat cover installed in his 1973 Plymouth Fury on August 27th, weeks after Adam disappeared. Tests on the car were inconclusive. James passed a voice stress analysis. His employer provided an alibi for the day in question. The investigation into James was discontinued. Then came Jeffrey Dahmer. In 1991, Dahmer was arrested in Milwaukee for crimes that shocked the world. And witnesses came forward saying they had seen a man matching his description at the Hollywood Mall the day Adam disappeared. He was living in Miami Beach that summer. He had access to a blue van. Investigators flew to Wisconsin and interviewed him. He denied it and was eventually ruled out. But his name has never fully left this case. There are people who still believe the full truth of that connection has never been established. We may never know. And then, Otis Elwood Toole. The TV film Adam aired on October 10th, 1983, drawing 38 million viewers. At the end of the broadcast, photos of missing children were shown on screen alongside a hotline number. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 11 days later, on October 21st, 1983, detectives received word that an inmate at a Florida prison was asking to talk about the Walsh case. His name was Otis Elwood Toole, 36 years old, a drifter from Jacksonville, a pyromaniac convicted of arson and murder, a man whose life had been defined by violence since childhood. Toole told investigators he had abducted a boy from a Sears in Fort Lauderdale in 1981. He said he had done it with his partner, Henry Lee Lucas. There was an immediate problem. Henry Lee Lucas was in jail in Virginia on July 27, 1981. He could not have been there. When detectives pointed this out, Toole shifted his story. "I did it alone," he said. "I only said Lucas did it to get back at him. He killed my niece." Toole and Lucas were known to investigators across multiple states as the Confession Killers, a pair who had claimed responsibility for somewhere between dozens and hundreds of murders, many of which were later proven false. They confessed for what investigators called fried chicken and field trips, getting out of their cells, eating free food, riding in cars. Most of their stories were fabrications built from details they had been fed during questioning. But Toole's confession about Adam Walsh contained details that gave investigators pause. He described the number of blows to the head. He described the position of the body. He described a canal near a wooden footbridge. These were details that, investigators said, had not been made public. When they took him on a field trip to the Hollywood Mall, he looked around and said it looked familiar. When they drove him to mile marker 126 on the turnpike, he said it might be where he had buried the body. When they reached mile marker 130, where Adam's head had actually been found, Toole pointed to a wooden footbridge and said, "I threw it from there." Police found the vehicle Toole claimed to have used, a white 1971 Cadillac sedan DeVille, owned by a woman named Faye McNett, who had repossessed it from Toole when he stopped making payments. The car was sitting in a lot in Jacksonville. On what records suggest was in early November 1983, investigators sprayed the interior with luminol. The floorboards lit up. There was blood, significant blood, on the driver's side and left rear floorboard. But in 1983, they could not determine whether the blood was human or animal. The technology simply did not exist. So they sealed the car, photographed the evidence, and left it in Jacksonville, waiting for Hollywood PD to come and collect it. Hollywood PD never came. The car sat. 6 months passed. A year. The car was eventually returned to the owner and sold for scrap in 1985. The carpet, the blood, the only piece of physical evidence that could have answered everything, gone. In 1995, an FBI agent contacted John Walsh. "Get me that carpet. Get me a blood sample. I have the technology now. We can run DNA. We can solve this." John Walsh went to the Hollywood Police Department to retrieve the evidence. It was gone. Lost. No record of where it went or why it was never collected. One investigator years later examined the luminol photographs from the Cadillac. He said he could see the outline of a face in the bloodstain on the rear floorboard. Reve Walsh looked at the same photograph and said, "That is my child. We will never know for certain." Toole confessed and recanted and confessed again across the years, at least 4 times in total. He told his niece on his deathbed in 1996 that he had killed Adam Walsh. "Yeah," he said, "I always felt kind of bad about it. He died on September 15, 1996, of cirrhosis of the liver in a Florida prison." Hollywood PD did not know he was dying. Nobody went to speak with him in his final days. In 2006, John and Reve Walsh made a decision. They hired a retired Miami Beach homicide detective named Joe Matthews to do what the Hollywood Police Department had never fully managed. Review the entire case from the beginning. 10,000 pages of documents, on every interrogation tape, every photograph, every piece of evidence still in existence. Matthews discovered something that no one had ever looked at. A roll of film from the 1983 crime scene examination of Toole's Cadillac had never been developed. He had it processed. Among the images was a photograph of the bloodstain on the rear floorboard, and in it, Matthews said he could see the clear impression of a child's face, transferred in blood onto the carpet. He concluded without reservation that Otis Elwood Toole had killed Adam Walsh. Hollywood PD reviewed Matthews' findings. They agreed. On December 16th, 2008, 27 years after a 6-year-old boy walked out of the east exit of a Sears department store and never came home, Hollywood Police Chief Chadwick Wagner stood before cameras with John and Reve Walsh at his side and announced that the case was officially closed. Otis Toole was named as the killer. Wagner publicly apologized for the lost evidence, the failures, the years of silence. John Walsh stepped to the microphone. "Today," he said, "is a reaffirmation that Adam didn't die in vain, but not everyone accepts the closure. Critics point out that every one of Toole's confessions was riddled with errors. The wrong clothing description, the wrong age estimate for the victim, the wrong partner in the crime. They note that he could not identify Adam's photo reliably. When they argue that the details he got right were details that could have been fed to him during questioning." And the Netflix documentary series The Confession Killer, released in 2019, presents footage appearing to show exactly that happening. Others maintain that Jeffrey Dahmer remains a credible alternative, that his presence in South Florida, the blue van, the witness accounts, and his documented willingness to lie when it suited him cannot be fully dismissed. Otis Toole died in 1996. Jeffrey Dahmer died in 1994. The physical evidence is gone. The car is gone. The carpet is gone. So I want to ask you something directly. After everything you have just heard, after all of it, what do you believe? There are things that happened after August 10th, 1981, that never made the news the way the search did. John and Reve Walsh stayed married, and that matters. Grief of this magnitude has a way of pulling people apart, of collapsing relationships that seem solid, of leaving two people stranded on opposite sides of something too large to cross. It didn't happen here. They had 3 more children. They built a life that carried Adam's absence inside it every single day, but did not collapse under the weight. Reve never finished her interior design degree. She didn't go back. In Dr. Ronald Wright's office, in those long hours after John had begged for his son's remains and been told it wasn't yet possible, something shifted. A path appeared. Not a path out of the grief. There was no path out of it, but a path through it. A way to make sure that what happened to Adam Walsh would never be allowed to happen as easily to anyone else. Doctor Wright told him plainly, "You can't have Adam's remains yet, but you can help other children. Make sure he didn't die in vain." John Walsh held on to those words. He carried them out of that office and did not put them down. They couldn't save Adam, but they were about to save hundreds of thousands of children they would never meet. Reve Walsh left school and didn't look back. John Walsh left the hotel industry and didn't look back. They founded the Adam Walsh Child Resource Center, a nonprofit dedicated to missing, abused, and exploited children. The rights to the TV film Adam sold for $150,000. That money funded the center's early operations. After the film aired, more than $40,000 in donations arrived from people across the country who had watched the story and felt the same thing viewers always feel when something true and terrible is placed in front of them: the need to do something. 13 of the 55 missing children whose photographs were shown at the end of the film were found as a direct result of tips called in after the broadcast. Parents across America had conversations with their children they had never thought to have before. The world was suddenly different in the way you only understand once it has already changed. In October 1982, just over a year after Adam disappeared, President Ronald Reagan signed the Missing Children Act into law. For the first time, information about missing children could be entered into the FBI's National Crime Information Computer Database. The gap John Walsh had stared into in disbelief, the gap where his son's name should have been, was closed. John pushed for VICAP, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, a national database to track serial offenders across state lines. He pushed and did not stop pushing until it existed. The Adam Walsh Child Resource Center became something larger. In June 1984, with the support of the federal government and John's relentless advocacy, it became the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Take a moment with what comes next. Since its founding, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has assisted in the recovery of more than 340,000 children. Let that land. 340,000 children. Children who came home. Children who were found. Children who grew up because a system existed that was built, brick by brick, law by law, year by year, on the foundation of one case. On July 27, 2006, exactly 25 years to the day after Adam Walsh disappeared from a mall in Hollywood, Florida, President George W. Bush signed the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act into law. It expanded the National Sex Offender Registry. It created a National Child Abuse Registry. It strengthened federal penalties for crimes against children and created new tools for law enforcement to combat online exploitation. In 1988, John Walsh became the host of America's Most Wanted, a program that put the faces of fugitives in front of the American public every week and asked a simple question: do you know where this person is? The show ran for 23 years. Over 1,100 fugitives were captured as a direct result of tips called in by viewers. Well, 1,100 families somewhere who got answers because a man who lost his son decided to spend his life making sure other people didn't have to. He went on to host The Hunt with John Walsh and In Pursuit with John Walsh. The work continued. It still continues. And then there is Code Adam. If you have ever been inside a large retail store, a Walmart, a Target, a department store of any kind, and heard an announcement over the intercom asking all employees to pay attention to a specific description of a missing child, that is Code Adam. Named for him, built in his memory. When a Code Adam is called, the store locks down. Every entrance is covered. Every employee stops what they are doing and begins searching. Nobody leaves the building until the child is found or law enforcement arrives. It is standard procedure in thousands of stores across America, and it exists because of something else the Walshes did, something that cost them. In July 1983, days before the statute of limitations expired, John and Rive sued Sears for negligence. Their argument was straightforward. Sears knew their security guard had sent a 6-year-old child alone into an unfamiliar parking lot. Sears said nothing. Sears did nothing. And Sears then threatened to drag the Walshes' private lives through a public courtroom to defend itself. The affair, the family dynamics, everything. John Walsh had a clear-eyed response. Adam wouldn't have been on that sidewalk if it weren't for Sears. But we had bigger battles to fight. They dropped the lawsuit in November 1983. Not because they lost, because they had made a decision about what kind of fight mattered more. Code Adam was the answer they chose instead, a system named for their son, placed inside every store in America, so that the things Sears did, sending a child outside alone without finding his parent, could never happen that way again. You have probably heard the Code Adam announcement without knowing whose name it carried. Now you know. Here is what I want to leave you with. Adam John Walsh was 6 years old. He was 3 feet 6 inches tall. He had sandy blonde hair and hazel eyes and dimpled cheeks covered in freckles, and a gap in his front teeth where a new one was pushing through. His nickname was Skeeter. He loved baseball. He loved drawing. He watched Sesame Street on the last morning of his ordinary life. He called his mother Mommy and his father Daddy. Yes, and when she told him she was going just a few aisles away, he looked up at her and said, "Okay, Mommy, I know where that is." He was a child. He was just a child. He should have grown up. He should have played in Little League and learned to drive and gone to college and fallen in love and had children of his own someday who would have called him Daddy. He should have had decades. He had 6 years. But what those 6 years became, what his parents made of them in the years that followed, is something that does not fit neatly into any one word. His name is on a national law. His name is called in stores across America every time a child goes missing, and the people nearby stop everything to help find them. The system that has brought more than 340,000 children home to their families exists because of him. Because of Rive, who stood in a toy department calling his name into silence. Because of John, who refused to let his son be a statistic. On a Monday afternoon in July 1981, Rive Walsh left her son in a toy department for 10 minutes. She has carried that 10 minutes with her every day since. She spent those days making sure no other mother would have to carry the same weight alone. Adam Walsh didn't save himself. He was 6 years old. He couldn't. But somewhere in America today, in a Walmart, a Target, a department store just like the one in Hollywood, Florida, a loudspeaker crackles to life. An announcement echoes through the fluorescent-lit aisles, a child's description, a call to action. Every employee stops what they are doing. Every exit is covered. Nobody leaves until that child is found. It is the same kind of announcement that echoed through the Hollywood Mall on July 27, 1981. The one that played every 15 minutes while a mother's heart broke in real time. The difference is what happens next. Because of Adam Walsh, that announcement is not just a page over a loudspeaker. It is a locked door. It is 20 people searching. It is a system that exists because a family refused to let their son's death mean nothing. And this time, that child comes home. If this story stayed with you, and I think it will, share it with someone who doesn't know Adam's name yet. Because the more people who know this story, the more people who understand why the systems that protect our children exist, and why we can never stop fighting to make them stronger. If you want to go deeper on cases like this one, stay here. There is more.